Hi everyone, Jane here. Thank you so much for watching today and welcome to you all. Today I am going to be using this new art book. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you will know that I absolutely love the Canson art book with the Saunders Waterford paper in, and I have had this little A5 one for a while. It's the landscape one, but I use it in a portrait way. And I recently discovered that they did one in A4. Now, they may have been doing this for ages and I've just never seen it, or it might be a new thing. But anyway, I decided to get hold of one. It is in the portrait orientation, so it's a bit different to my smaller A5 ones, but I can use it either way around. So today I'm using up as portrait. Now it's really strange because I'm not really a spiral bound kind of person. I don't overly like spiral bound sketchbooks, but it has just ended up being one of my very favourite, and I think it's probably mostly because of the paper that's in there. I just love this Saunders Waterford watercolour cardstock. I have the cold pressed version. It is 300 GSM. You get 20 sheets, so 40 pages, and I have already filled one A5 book, which I did a flip through of, and I bought another one and another one just for backups. But this one just gives me a bit more scope. So for this project, I decided to look back at something I'd made in my previous journal and recreate it in a bigger format, slightly different, but using the same sorts of materials. So I started off by using that stencil, which was one by France Papillon. It's no longer produced, but I get asked about it a lot. If you go on the Stampers Grove website in the UK, they do have old France Papillon stencils. So I suggest you look there if you are really interested. It's the only place I've seen it. It's one I've had for quite a long time. It's sort of like wonky rectangles. She also had one that was was circles as well, not wonky circles. And I do love using this one. And I'm using the Kuretake Gansai Tambo Granulating watercolours. That's a mouthful, isn't it? In both sets 1 and set 2. So what I'm doing here is, for the first 5 rectangles, I'm just going down the set 1. Then for the second set, I go down set 2, and then I just use the first 2 again from set 1. So I'm not going to read out all the colours because I'm sure you can look those up. I think the first set was the Auroras and the second set was the Cosmics. I really enjoy these watercolours, and if you want to get that splitting effect of the colours, you do need to add quite a lot of water, which is what I'm doing here. So I added water to my squares. The pen I used for drawing my rectangles was a Unipin black 0.6 pen, fine liner, so it's waterproof, it's a permanent pen, and because I knew this is what I was going to do. And so I add lots of water to the rectangle, and then I'm adding a bit of water to my paint as well, and then making sure I get plenty down, because that's the best way to get good splitting and granulation. I find these colours, and I'm guessing that because of the way they've been organised as an Aurora and a Cosmic set, they are meant to be sort of quite galaxy inspired, and they are fairly muted. So if you are wanting super duper popping, bright, granulating, splitting colours, these probably aren't the sets for you. But I thought this was a nice way as well for you to see both the sets sort of swatched out. So it's swatching, but it's not swatching. It's creating my background, but it could also act as a way of swatching them out if you wanted to see the colours. And you can quite clearly see which ones might be the better set for you if you are interested in either of them, or whether they're really just not something that sings to you. But you do need to remember that when you're first putting these colours down, that is not what you're getting at the end. So a couple of them, for example, the Aurora Orange, which is the third colour at the top, goes down looking very much like it's brown, and you would probably put it down and go, well, this is not orange in any way, shape or form. But as it dries, it starts to split into orange and green, and you can see from here, because this is sped up 3 times, so it's not sped up unrealistically fast, but you know, they are fairly quickly, and they were fairly quickly changing before my eyes as I was painting this, you know, they weren't taken forever. But here's a bit of a closer look at the colours. The one I would say doesn't really split is that cosmic green, which just stays as a green. So I got out some different stamp sets. I wanted some mark making sets and some archival ink, and I will list the colours of the archivals in the description box if you're interested, rather than me telling you what they all are. I will list what I have used in the description box so that you can get an idea. I don't add links because everybody's in different countries, so we all have different opportunities and different prices. And if I add a link and then it expires or that company is no longer in existence, then I can get into trouble with YouTube. So I prefer to just give you a list that you can search up. It's easy enough to just pop the name into a search engine and find where is best for you. Okay, so I hope that's okay with everybody. And I am just going with a variety of these stamps. Now, I didn't overly have much of a plan, except I did know I wanted to form some kind of framing around these rectangles. I wasn't worried if they all had a frame. I wasn't trying to get them all to be the same. I didn't worry if some edges didn't get anything on them, but I was just having a bit of fun playing around with the stamps and the inks and just going with the flow really of what I could do. Now you see, sometimes I add my stamp to a stamping block, that acrylic block. That's if it's a smaller stamp quite often. And I know I'm going to use the whole thing, I will do that because it gives me a bit more pressure to put onto the page with the ink to get a better impression. But sometimes, like here, if it's a rubber, especially if it's a rubber stamp that's on a base, I might just use it in my hand. Or like here where I'm just trying to get a little bit of the stamp, or I'm not worried if it's a full impression. And quite often when I'm using background stamps, this is something I will do. And, you know, it just gives you a bit more flexibility with how you use your stamps and where you can put them as well. Because sometimes having them on a block is a bit limiting, especially if you've got something like a spiral bound book, because I often will put my stamp on my block and then forget that it's going to hit that edge of that spiral binding. So that's something to be aware of. So again, as you can see here with this rubber stamp from Darkroom Door, this didn't require being put onto a block. It's quite a sturdy stamp. So, you know, you just get a feel for how your stamps act. And sometimes, for example, like with the long threads and things, I only wanted to use a part of it. So I would only ink up a part and just press that part down. Now this final one, I wanted to be a little bit more vibrant or focal, and I was going to use my archival black, and then I changed to my Versafine black, which is Nocturne, because it is a more juicier ink, even though even still here that it has a slightly more muted sort of tone. And then just because they were beside me and I decided I wanted to fill in some of these shapes, I'm going in with my Neocolor ones. I won't list the colours of these because, to be honest, I don't know what colours I picked, because I was just trying to pick colours that had a bit of an industrial rusty vibe. Because this was quite muted tones, and I already knew that I wanted to use a collage image from one of the industrial books by Maremi, I went with those sorts of tones within my stamping and within this little bit of colouring that I'm doing here. Then I did feel it still needed something else, and usually when I think something needs something else, it's stenciling. So this is the Back to Square 1 stencil from Lemon Creation. Again, unfortunately, she's no longer making the physical product of these, but I'm sure that any stencil you have that is maybe similar, or you don't even have to use squares. You could use circles, you could use cogs, you could do whatever you like. I like the squares because it reflected back what I'd already done in the background with those rectangles. So I'm just adding in some titanium white from Amsterdam acrylic there. So this is the book I used, the Industrial Fashionista Personas, and I cut out this rather large image, and that was another reason why I wanted to get a bigger book, because it enables me to use these bigger images. I do have you know, my Dina Wakley ledger, but sometimes I don't want to have that text in the background. I want something plain that I can totally add on, and that is more of a watercolour paper. Now, I did cut some bits off this image when I cut it out, and that's something, you know, that I always say to people, that if an image in a collage doesn't speak to you totally, you know, take bits off, cut bits off. It's your image. You've paid for this book. You know, do what you want to do with it. Do what you need to do with it. And for this one, I did feel that she needed a little bit of shading just around the edge. Not too dark, so I didn't want to go in with my Stabilo all black, although I do add a little touch of that in a bit. So I'm going in with the Derwent Inktense, and this is charcoal grey. And this is a nice one if... I know you can water out black, but sometimes when you add the black pencils, they go down very, very pigmented, and it takes a lot more effort to water them out. And I was trying very hard today to not be as fussy as I usually am when I'm adding shadow. I can spend an awful long time going back in, adding a bit more, watering it out, adding a bit more. So I thought I was going to try to be a little bit more, go with the flow, just get the colour down, do what I needed to do and finish the shading, because sometimes less is more, in terms of that. Sometimes I feel like I'm in danger of overthinking it and overworking it. And even though this is watercolour paper, you don't want to keep going over and over and over and over it, because eventually it will start to break down the paper surface, and I didn't want to do that. So I must say as well, I did add my collage image down with the Liquitex Professional Matte Medium, which is just my favourite medium of choice, but any glue that you have, or any gel medium, or whatever it is you use to stick your collage images down, is perfectly fine as well. It does mean when you've added something like a matte medium right over the top, like I always do, is that when I am adding any colour around the edges, if I do get it accidentally onto my image, I can wipe it off if I'm quick enough as well, so that, you know, it gives me that extra bit of wiggle room. So as well as going around her as a shadow, I did want her to be standing on something, and I felt the grey just wasn't quite dark enough for that element, so I did go in with my black Stabilo Aall pencil just to add a bit of extra grounding for her, so she didn't look like she was floating in midair. And then I still felt, even though I'd put that white stenciling in, that I wanted a little bit more white in the background. So I'm just covering her up because I didn't want to speckle her face with ink. And I'm using the Winsor & Newton, I think it's the drawing ink. It's the white one, and just doing some splatters. And then I went in with my white Posca pen to add a few highlights. Now, here I added a couple of dots. I added some dots to her eyelids and to her mouth. And in a minute you'll see that I decided I didn't like that. It felt a bit too much on her face. I wasn't bothered about the other bits, but the bit on her face just was really bothering me. So I decided to try and lift it. That wasn't really working. So I went in with, for some reason, I thought I'll go over it with a grey acrylic marker, and that just made things worse. So that's me trying to get rid of it. And in the end, what I did was I got out my pencil. So these are the Derwent Drawing. I think I got a combination of Derwent Drawing, Luminance, and probably some others in there. And I just went in with some of matching colours just to try and cover up what I'd done. I've sort of messed up a little bit in places, but by the end it was okay. But this is just to show as well that, you know, if you make a mistake, there's nearly always a way of getting around it. You know, just go back in with some other products. Lots of products, like pencils in particular, are really good at going over things and adding it. And then I decided to add a little bit more colour in because I'd started doing that. I thought, oh, this is quite fun. I'm going to go in with a bit more of different colours and add a bit more colour to her face and hair, so that it's like personalising it a bit more. So if sometimes you feel like by adding things like collage, you're not really doing as much as you want, then go in and add your pens, add your pencils, add your other mediums, and make it more your own. So finally, this is a sentiment from Lemon Creation, and I just thought it went with the spread, well, the page, because she was in front of the moon. I know there are no stars on here and it says Dance Beneath the Stars, but I felt like it was maybe something that she should be doing, was dancing beneath the stars. I know she looks a little bit melancholy, but maybe this is just a reminder to her that she should be dancing beneath those stars, not feeling so sad. And here is my finished page. So thank you ever so much for watching today. If you have enjoyed this video, do please give it a thumbs up. And if you see that hype button, I'd love it if you could hype the video. And if you haven't already subscribed, then please feel free to hit that subscribe button to see more of my content when it arrives. So until the next time, thank you so much for watching, and bye-bye.